Hey guys, Mike here from Lunch Money Comics with a rather lazy cold open. That's because I went out yard sailing with my son, and for the better part of the morning, we had absolutely abysmal luck. We found nothing worth picking up, but we wanted to make a day out of it, so we decided instead to go to a gaming store. We got some magic cards, we went out for lunch, had some good father-son bonding. But after lunch, in the early afternoon, our luck changed pretty quickly when we found two yard sales full of comic books, including some pretty good ones that we brought home. So this individual here actually posted kind of late on Facebook Marketplace that they had comic books, and we were in the area already. So we shot over there, and I actually recognized the guy who was selling these books, and he recognized me back, not only from the channel, but we've actually met before at a local comic book store. His name was Michael, and he had a ton of comic books he had down in his basement that he needed to get rid of to make some room. So we started bringing up long boxes, and he said he had a lot more than what was here. He just got tired of bringing stuff up. I set Jack to work right off the bat. He knows the types of things I like. You see here, I found these old Avengers versus X-Men. Sort of these are the fight issues where a different Avenger would face off against a different X-Man. Thought Jack might like these ones. But, I asked Michael how much he was asking for all of these books, and he wanted $1 each, except some of them were individually priced, which we'll talk about in a second. So most of these books were bagged and boarded. Certainly not all of them. You see Jack to my right there going through some unbagged ones. But these titles were all over the place, guys. They were not organized. You see I found a box here of mostly DC. And although I'm not a big DC collector, there are some books I definitely like, and I'm always looking for good reading material. Like this book right here, which is Ra's al Ghul's Greatest Clashes Against Batman, which I thought not only had some great reading potential, but mostly I wanted for the artist that worked on it. I'll definitely talk about that in a second. And this box did have some X-Men related titles like X Factor, but not a lot of X-Men. Michael said he had a lot more down in his basement he'd be bringing up later. I'll explain that in a few minutes. I did find this Infinity Gauntlet number 6. I love this series by Jim Starlin from 1991. Had to pick that up. I also found this Superman number 4, First Bloodsport, which was individually priced. There were a lot of books that were priced kind of randomly, like these Blue Beetles. These are Charlton books from the 1960s. Actually, Jack's going to interrupt this shot real quick. You see him showing me a coverless book, and I am explaining to him how to look up the issue number. So, you got to educate your kids on this sort of stuff when it comes up. All right, back to the Blue Beetles. Yeah, these were from the 60s. He had these priced a little bit higher, but you'll see I definitely found some interest in them, actually for kind of odd reasons. So yeah, we thought this place was fantastic. We had a great time. As you can see, there's a ton of books, and there's Mike right there. So happy to meet him, meet a fan of the channel. So at this point, it was mid-afternoon. It was getting late in the day. Me and Jack started heading home, and we saw a sign for a yard sale. And, normally, guys, when I find comics at a yard sale, it's because I kind of already knew about them. They were posted either on Facebook or Craigslist. This was just a cold stop, and, it was probably 2:45. The sign said they were closing at 3. We stopped in, and I was shocked to find not only comic books, but a ton of them. They were laid out in the driveway, and there were even more in the garage. I couldn't believe it. I had no idea these would be there. Really fortuitous thing to stumble across. And now almost all these books were from after the year 2000, and actually after 2010 at that. And a lot of them were bagged twice, meaning there were 2 books per bag to save on, effort and time and money, I suppose. But yeah, so I had to look really close. I did find the series of Nova, which I like, featuring Sam Alexander. You see right there the first issue. I also found some of these World War Hulks. I actually got the prologue of this not that long ago. I was interested in getting the whole series. Well, here it is presenting itself to me. I couldn't believe it. There were some X-Men books. Again, they were from, the late, 20-aughts, I guess, in early 20-teens, and a lot of Avengers books. Jack was having a fun time digging as well. And in the garage, there were even more boxes, including a suitcase. Yeah, an actual suitcase full of comic books. You see here, I am going through those World War Hulks. Like I said, they were double bagged, so I had to make sure they were all in there. There were actually duplicates of a lot of these things as well. This individual was also selling these for $1 each. Also giving you a bundle deal if you got a whole bunch. I found some Justice League Darks as well. All right, so this is actually the next day. So let's go back to that first yard sale and that individual named Michael. Like I said, he sort of got tired of bringing up boxes on that day. He said he was doing the yard sale over 2 days, and he was bringing up more tomorrow, and he wondered if I'd be in the area. Well, this was in Connecticut, so normally I wouldn't be, except fortuitously for me, there was a comic book show literally around the corner from where he lived. You'll see that in another video on my channel. But yeah, he brought up some new books you see in the front of these long boxes. I found first Amanda Waller right off the bat. Once again, completely random, not really sorted, and he was asking $1 for all of them. So Michael said he also brought up two short boxes of comics, and there was a lot of X-Men books in there, which of course got me excited. This is my favorite title, and I will pick them up even if I already own them, if they're in better condition, or I like them, right? There was some minor key issues, but this box was pretty darn random, guys. We have some Avengers, we have some old Western books in there, we have some real Ghostbusters, we have Thing, we have Elf, a completely eclectic mix, guys. You never know what you're going to find in these boxes. That's why it's fun to dig through them. So as I'm going through these boxes, I'm actually talking to an individual who's on my left, also going through them, and he had a big old stack of comics, and as it turned out, he was also going to the comic book show around the corner. I actually saw him about 15 or 20 minutes later at the same show. So it's fun to bump into people, guys, not only at the shows, but fellow comic hunters who appreciate yard sales as much as I do. So you see in this box, I find a lot more Uncanny X-Men. I'm getting excited. There are some minor key issues in here. First, Life, Death. These are mostly dollar books like this X-Men #1. But then I found this. This is the first appearance of Mr. Sinister, followed by the first Wolverine vs. Sabretooth fight. These books are definitely worth more than $1, and I assumed that Michael had priced them higher like he did for some other books. So I kept going through here and made a little stack of books I was interested in, and I was prepared to spend a little bit more money for these books. However, when I asked Michael how much they were, he said, still $1. So you guys know me, I'm Mr. Honest. I told Michael what I thought they were worth. I thought the Mr. Sinister was worth about $30 in that condition. I thought the X-Men was worth about $10. And he was amazed. He was actually surprised. And I said, all right, now how much would you like to sell them to me for? And he appreciated the honesty, and he sold them to me for $20. So we were both pretty happy with that. I still got a great price, and he got a little bit more money than he expected. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it, buddy. Good to see you. Yeah, take it easy.
You say goodbye?
Bye.
Bye.
All right, guys, I always say it, but you should always be honest. There's no way I could, in good faith and conscience, buy these ones, especially the first Mr. Sinister for $1. I was honest with him and told him how much it was worth. He appreciated my honesty. He still sold them to me for a great price. Not only that, he says he has plenty more comic books that he is interested in selling at some point. So again, guys, be honest, because it may not always get you the best deals, but it definitely gets you the most opportunities. So there you go. That was my, afternoon of hunting for comic books at yard sales with my son. For the better part of the morning, I thought we were going to strike out. I didn't find anything very good, but the afternoon just went to show it's been the summer of good yard sale finds for me. I'm not just talking about comic books. I found tons of things that I collect, things that I could resell and make some money, but especially comic books. In fact, I've done some recent videos where I found some whole collections that I brought home. I don't need to do any more of that. I have too many comic books down here as it is. But still, guys, I ended up with a pretty great stack of comic books at a fantastic price. So before I show you what they are, you know the drill. Head on down, hit that like button. You can follow me on Instagram under Lunch Money Comics IG. So let's start with the second location you saw in the footage. As I mentioned in the voiceover, we did not expect that at all. We were on our way home. It was actually threatening to rain. We saw signs saying, hey, yard sale down the street. I said, hey, let's go check it out really quick. You could imagine how shocked I was when I saw how many comic books there were. I actually asked the guy who was selling them if he posted online. He said he did. So I just missed it. I just didn't catch it when I was doing my investigation. So it might have very well been picked throughout the day. That's okay. I still got some pretty great comic books out of there. So let's start with this one. This is Justice League Dark #1, Volume 2 from 2018. So I've mentioned Justice League Dark a million times on my channel. I really like the team. I like the darker DC characters. And I've been reading the original New 52 version of this team, but in 2018, they rebooted it as sort of a Volume 2 written by James Tynion IV that featured a sort of all-new lineup. So you had some old standards, right? You have Swamp Thing, you have Zatanna, but we also have Wonder Woman, Man-Bat, and my personal favorite, Detective Chimp. So I actually already own this book, but it's a sketch variant. I didn't own the real original cover. And it also came with the second issue. Like I said, they were all front to back grouped together. And this is a cool titleless variant as well. So pretty darn cool, guys. I'm interested in digging into this series. Let me know down in the comments if you read it. Happy to pick these up really cheap. Next up, here's a pretty famous cover. We have Captain Marvel #1 and, of course, #2, back to back, like I said. It's a series from 2012 written by Kelly Sue DeConnick, which basically rebooted the character, or at least reinvented the character of Carol Danvers. So before this title, she was known by many things like Ms. Marvel or Binary or Warbird, but this is the first time she goes by Captain Marvel in her own ongoing series. They completely revamp her look. They put her in the flight suit instead of the skimpy outfit. They give her a new hairdo. And this is sort of the version of Carol Danvers a lot of people know from like Civil War 2 and of course the MCU played by Brie Larson. So this is a pretty cool comic cover. It's pretty iconic. I actually have one of these I gave to my daughter, so I'm happy to get another one to add to my own personal collection. Next up, yeah, you saw in the footage there were a lot of Nova. In fact, there was a ton of Nova, which I really like. But I picked up these ones, once again, issues 1 and 2 of the 2013 series by Jeff Loeb that features Sam Alexander. So this is the Sam Alexander Nova in his first ongoing series. Yeah, you know, he's the younger version instead of Richard Rider. We have a new one, and it's cool. I really like the series. I really like this cover. I always pick it up whenever I can find it cheap. And yeah, I actually want to read most of the series, but got first and second issue. Thought it was pretty good, worth picking up. So the last books I got at this place I think are definitely the best. I recently talked about this comic book on my channel. I actually got this very book at another yard sale recently. This is the World War Hulk prologue. So this was a 5-issue series from 2007 plus a 6th issue, the prologue, which features a story where the Illuminati, the smartest guys in the Marvel Universe, exile Bruce Banner, the Hulk, to space. They banish him from Earth. He goes into space, has space adventures, ends up on the planet of Sakaar. Those of you that watch Thor Ragnarok know exactly what that is. And then he comes back to Earth to exact his revenge on the members of the Illuminati and their respective teams. Actually, with the exception of Namor. Namor was the one Illuminati member that did not want to banish the Hulk, so he leaves Atlantis alone. But otherwise, it's, for all intents and purposes, Hulk versus the Marvel Universe. And it's a highly acclaimed series, and it's pretty cool. And when I got this book, I said, I want to read the whole thing. Well, lucky me, couldn't believe it. I came across the entire series, the rest of the 5 issues here. I actually have 2 issues of number 1, front to back. They were both in there. I got duplicates, so I'll show you guys each of these covers here. But here's something else that's pretty cool. I heard that this was the first appearance of Hulk's son, Scar. Now, I always thought the first appearance of Scar was actually in a What If comic, which is true, but it's not the main Marvel 616 continuity, right? That version of Scar, the real one in this 616 Marvel Universe, that first appears in the 5th issue right here. So that was pretty cool. I actually did not know that when I got this series. I thought it was like a cameo or something like that. So I'm very happy to get the entire set, plus 1 extra book, of the World War Hulk storyline. I'm definitely going to read this. Now, I got 13 books from this individual, and like I said, they were $1 each, unless I got a deal. And I got all of these, all 13 of these books for $10 total, which I think is a smashing deal. I think, you know, the World War Hulk story is definitely worth more than that. So yeah, guys, obviously I could have bought a heck of a lot more comics. It was late in the day. It was about to rain. But I'm still pretty happy with all my pickups. Definitely some good ones in here, and I definitely think I got my money's worth. But this is nothing compared to what I got at the other location. So now let's talk about both the first and the last location you saw in the footage, because they were one and the same. As I mentioned in the voiceover, as I was walking up the driveway, I saw the seller and he looked familiar to me. And as fate would have it, not only was he a viewer of Lunch Money Comics, I'd actually met him before at a local comic book show. His name was Michael, and yeah, he was basically just trying to make room in his basement by selling a lot of his extra comic books. And basically what he did was he started bringing up boxes of comics, and then when he got tired, he just didn't bring up anymore. So when me and Jack were going through these comics, and he had a lot of ones I was interested in, he told me that he was having a sale on both days of the weekend, and if I was able to come the next day, he'd have more books that he'd bring up. Now, normally that wouldn't have worked out for me because, as I said, this was in Connecticut, not that close to my house. But just by a huge stroke of luck, there was a comic book show happening literally around the corner from him that I was already planning on going. So I knew I was going to be there in the morning, and boy, am I happy that I went. So first, let's talk about the comic books I got on that first day. Again, I'm going to go through these quick. Let's start with this one here. We have some X-Men, Uncanny X-Men number 453. I need this for my X-Men run. This is from 2005, written by Chris Claremont. Had to have it. Here's another X-Men book. This is Astonishing X-Men from 2008. This is part of the Joss Whedon run. We have a cool Colossus cover right there. Did not own this already. We have Infinity Gauntlet number 6. I love the 6-part storyline by Jim Starlin in 1991. Super famous. They based the movie partly on it. And whenever I can find these really cheap guys, I pick them up. I try to put sets of 6 together whenever I can. Happy to get this one really cheap. This one you saw in the footage, and this is actually worth a quick discussion. So this is the saga of Ra's al Ghul, representing his classic clashes against Batman, number 1. It's number 1 of a 4-part miniseries from 1988. So yeah, there's 3 different stories in here of Batman versus Ra's al Ghul, cool wraparound cover. I thought immediately it would be a neat thing to read because I like Ra's al Ghul. You know, I don't read a lot of DC, but I would definitely read this. But then I saw who worked on it. The people that worked on these books are Denny O'Neil, Bob Brown, Dick Giordano, and my personal favorite, Neil Adams. Neil Adams actually did the pencils in 2 of the 3 issues in here. So I had to pick it up, guys. Absolutely going to read this. Super cool. This next book is one that I have not read, but I've heard a lot of good things about it. This is Eternals #1 by Neil Gaiman and John Romita Jr. This is a 2006 series. Actually ended up going 7 issues. It was supposed to be 6 originally. They had to add a 7th one because there was just too much story to tell. Yeah, this was Neil Gaiman's basic a revamp of the Eternals, which of course is a Jack Kirby creation from the 70s. This has been very highly acclaimed, and I really like Neil Gaiman. I've been talking about how I've been into Sandman lately. I haven't read it. I have not read the series. I can only find the first issue in there, but I'm happy to pick this one up. Let me know down in the comments if any of you have read the series and what you think of it. Next up, this is the first book that he actually had priced. I think he had a couple dollars on it. It's this is Superman #4 from 1987. This is part of the John Byrne run. John Byrne not only did the art, but he also wrote this series. And this is the first appearance of this character of Bloodsport. Now, you can find this book pretty cheap. Again, I think it was worth a couple of dollars. I was happy to pick this one up. Yeah, just a cool cover, cool comic book, easy to find. But the last two I got on this day were those 2 Blue Beetles. Now, Michael originally had these priced at like $10 or $15. We looked them up, and they weren't worth that much. Still, again, I'll tell you what I paid for everything. And normally I wouldn't be that interested in these, but 1, I got them really, really cheap. And 2, they are pretty cool. So let's talk about the second one first. So this is Blue Beetle #5. It's from 1965. This one's actually in pretty good shape, which is the reason why it jumped out to me, the Challenge of the Red Knight. I just thought this was really neat. Happy to pick it up. But it's this book. This is the one that jumped out to me the most, despite the fact that it's actually in the worst condition of the 2. So this is #3. It's from the year before, 1964, and it's definitely in worse shape. Why would I be interested in this? Well, when I was looking it up, I saw a name pop up that made me excited, and that name was George R.R. Martin. Yeah, the author of A Song of Fire and Ice, a Game of Thrones, to you lay people who watch the TV show only. I love George R.R. Martin. I've been reading those books. Man, I don't want to carbon date myself, but I've been reading them since they came out. Yeah. Far before the show. I love George R. R. Martin. I've read a lot of his other non-Game of Thrones stuff as well. And I think a lot of people know this, but George R. R. Martin is a gigantic comic book fan. Not only was he a big comic book collector and writes kind of modern comic books now, but he also used to write in fan letters, to the letters to the editor. And this book came up as one that he actually wrote into, and it's right there. So George R. R. Martin wrote into the Charlton publisher. He would have been about 16 years old. And I'm going to read this to you guys really quick. Dear editor, the first issue of Blue Beetle wasn't the greatest comic book I've ever seen, but it was the best stuff to come from your company. The plot of his origin story was excellent, and the tale itself was very good. I really like Blue Beetle's costume, especially those cool eyepieces. Somehow, this getup is snazzy in its simplicity. George R. R. Martin, Bayonne, New Jersey. So I thought that was really cool, guys. As a big George R. R. Martin fan, I had to have this book. By the way, if any of you out there are fans of a Game of Thrones or House of the Dragon, the current show that's on HBO, me and my good friend Rohan from Absolute Game of Nerds have been doing a weekly recap of the latest episode. Yeah, we do our reaction video, the day after it comes out, and then it posts a few days later. I'll definitely link to it down in the description. You should absolutely check it out if you are a fan. So all of these comic books I got here from Michael on that first day, I got for $20 total. Like I said, he was asking a little bit more money for these. Happy to pay him, a little bit more for these cool 1960s Charlton comics, and of course, some pretty cool comic books to add to my runs and to read. But of course, as good as these books are, it's definitely the books I got on the next day that are a little bit more interesting. So on that second day, he did bring up more comic books, but it wasn't like a ton. It was just 2 short boxes and then like a little stack he threw in one of the long boxes. Still, it was totally worth it, guys. I only got 3 comic books, but they're all pretty darn good. So the first one I found, and I found it immediately, was this. This is Legends #1 from 1986. And this is known as the first appearance of Amanda Waller. I think a lot of people know who she is. She's one of the people associated with the Suicide Squad. Not the nicest lady, but she's appeared in DC Comics, ever since. Pretty cool over here. You know what's really neat about this whole Legend series is who's worked on it. We have John Ostrander, Len Wein, and John Byrne. Just great names worked on this series, guys. Happy to pick that up for basically end up being less than $1. I'll explain that in a second. So those last 2 comic books, I'll just hold them up right now. You know exactly what they are. Uncanny X-Men #221 and Uncanny X-Men #212. So let's start with 212. This is from 1986. Of course, these are both written by Chris Claremont. This one is Rick Leonardi pencils, although the cover is Barry Windsor-Smith. And this is part of the Mutant Massacre storyline. And this is the first battle between Sabretooth and Wolverine. in publication. Obviously, they've retconned that there's been lots of fights, between these guys over like 100 years, but this is the first time you see it on the page, these guys fighting against one another. So it's a pretty cool book. It's a neat cover by Barry Windsor Smith. It's a fantastic read. Awesome book. This book used to be worth more, but I think you can get this book around like $10 or so. That's what I was sort of picturing when I grabbed it. But it's the other book, the iconic blue cover everyone knows, Uncanny X-Men number 221 from 1987. Of course, Chris Claremont. Art, pencils inside, and the cover by Mark Silvestri, who's one of my personal favorites, to be honest. And this is the first full appearance of Mr. Sinister himself, one of the best X-Men villains. And everyone knows what this book is, guys. Same thing, the market's coming down. This book has dropped, but this is in pretty good shape. This book can still go for, $25, $30. I thought these would be priced out separately, and when I went up to Michael, I asked him how much. I said specifically, how much for these two books? Like, oh, they were $1. So I explained why they were worth more, and I told him I thought this was worth $30 and this was worth $10. And here's the kicker, guys. Not only was he surprised by how much this was worth, he said he had like 3 of them. He's like, oh, downstairs I have a whole bunch more of those. So I don't know what else he's got down there. But yeah, so I basically posed a question to him like this. I had these 3 books. I actually had 5. I put a couple back. I said, Michael, all right, you know how much you're worth? How much do you want to sell them to me for? And he thought for a moment. He was definitely surprised by my honesty. He was surprised they were worth as much as they were, and I'm pretty sure he still would have sold them to me for $1 each. But I told him I wanted to pay him more. He thought for a moment and said, how about $20 for all of them? And I said that was fine. I think it was a win-win for both of us. I still get these for a pretty good price, and he got a little bit more money that he didn't expect to get. Now, I've mentioned doing this on my channel in the past where I've been very honest with people how much their comics are worth and offered to pay up more for the comic books I bought. I don't want to come off as preachy when I do this. I'm not telling you need to do that. In fact, I think you'd be completely in your rights to find these books in a garage sale and pay $1 for them. That's what they're being sold for. I'm just saying, me personally, that's how I like to operate. It gives me more of a clear conscience, especially when it's someone as nice and likable as this guy. So he's sitting there, with his 2 young kids playing with them. He's a comic collector. He watches Lunch Money Comics. I've met him before. He invited me back. He told me he was having more books the next day and I should come back and check them out. That was a very nice thing for him to do. I felt like it was the least I could do to pay up a little bit more for books that were, quite frankly, worth more. Again, I'm not telling you have to do that. That's just the way I roll. And like I said in that little footage when I was sitting in my car, when you're honest like that, you may not always get the best deals in comics, but you will definitely get more opportunities because, like I said, he has a lot more comic books he still hasn't brought out. He told me when he's ready to sell them, he would contact me, and by his own admission, he's got more stuff like this. He's got better stuff that I may be able to get. So, like I say, guys, treat people honestly and fairly. It can lead to some really great things. And again, I sleep better at night. Head on down in the comments and let me know if you think I did the right thing. Let me know if you would have done the same. There's no wrong answer here, guys. There's no wrong answer. I promise you that. I'm not going to judge any of you that say you would have taken them for $1. I think most people would. I'm weird like that, I guess. But that is it, guys. Head on down in the comments and let me know what you think of all of my pickups. I got all these comic books. Oh, let me grab them all. There's a ton of them. I got all of these comic books for, let's see, $50. $50 total for all of these, including some pretty good ones, not only to add to my collection, not only ones to read, but some good key issues that I think are definitely worth more than $50 if you add them all up. Head on down to the comments, guys. I'd love to hear all your opinions on this one. And that is it. In the meantime, I hope you keep hunting for comic books in strange and unusual places like garage sales, tag sales, yard sales, whatever you call them in your neck of the woods. Thank you all so very much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.